John, in your last video you were suggesting that something like the pantorouter is really meant for production.
I said that isn't that like a production machine? It'd be a different thing if you're making like 100 chairs or something like that.
Now, if I only need to make 10 mortise and tenon joints, the pantorouter can be too much trouble to set up, and I tend to, for just a few joints, use my slot mortise or my quickset tenon jig. But you'd be surprised how quickly you get up to a lot of tenons. Look at this stool, for example. It has 4 sides. Each side has this cross piece and this cross piece, and each one has a mortise and tenon joint on each end, which means in just this one stool I've got 16 mortise and tenon joints. One stool. If I make a chair, I have at the very least these things here, so 8 mortise and tenon joints. Now suppose I make a set of 4 chairs. Now I'm up to 32 mortise and tenon joints. So you don't have to build 100 chairs to get up to 100 joints. It adds up very easily, and at that point setting up the pantorouter becomes worth it. Or have a look at, for instance, this lumber rack. It's got 5 verticals. Each vertical has got 5 of these on it. Each one of those has a triple mortise and tenon joint. That means in this lumber rack there's 75 mortise and tenon joints. Or these shelves that I built for the basement, where I made these uprights, essentially 5 ladders. Each ladder has got 4 cross pieces. Each cross piece has a double mortise and tenon joint on each end. So that means 4 mortise and tenon joints per cross piece, 4 per ladder, means 16 mortise and tenon joints, and 5 ladders, 80 mortise and tenon joints. It adds up. It's worth setting up. Now, John, one thing you didn't mention is that you actually own a pantorouter, the one I gave you 2 years ago. You should really give that thing a try sometime. Okay, next point to refute. You were saying my screw advanced box joint jig is too complicated, it's not worth the effort. Well, when I made those storage boxes for the basement, I had to cut 680 notches for those joints in the corners of the boxes, and I was able to stack 4 or 5 pieces in there at a time, so it wasn't so bad. With your jig, first of all, it would be a stretch to stack 2 pieces on there at once, which means now you have to cut that joint 680 divided by 2. You have to cut that 340 times, and with the way the advance works on yours, you got that little thumb thing, which you can really only advance by about 1/4 inch at a time. And since the fingers were 3/4 of an inch apart, you got to do that 3 times per joint. So after you've hit that thumb thing 1,000 times, you might be singing a different tune. Whereas on mine, I just turn the crank 3 times and that's it. Much quicker. So if you make enough things, it's worth it, and it doesn't take that many things to make it enough. And the final thing you were suggesting was that the parallelogram mechanism for raising and lowering the infeed table on my jointer was more complicated than necessary, and you simplified it by using an incline. Well, my first thought for the design of the jointer was an incline as well, but I changed to a parallelogram because, thinking about it in detail, I decided the incline was just too much trouble, too hard to keep everything straight, and the parallelogram was much better. I should make a video demonstrating how well this parallelogram mechanism actually works, but that's a lot more than just a talking video, so I think I'll put that on my second channel instead of this channel.